Good morning, students. Today we would study about one of the most illustrious men in history. And whether you happen to be a student of history, or whether you happen to be a student of music or any art or stream, or if you happen to be an illiterate person, you still have, in one way or the other, you all have heard about this name, Genghis Khan. It is impossible that you haven't heard about Genghis Khan in a civilized world. You know, for different people, this gentleman means different things. For people who are into military strategies, he's considered to be one of the greatest military generals of all time. For them who are humanists, he's considered to be a butcher, someone who he is not worth even calling a human, because he was responsible for the deaths of millions and millions of citizens around the world, because wherever he went, he butchered them like with an enormous amount of hatred and ferocity at the same time. So, and he was a great empire builder. So there are a lot of people who admire his empire building skills and his amazing powers of administration, and of course, but there is one thing which all of them agree upon, and which is that a man who at that point in time could rule over such massive geographies. Guys, we are talking about 800 years ago. Today, you have all means of communication, of governance, and even then, we understand that ruling even a small state like Uttarakhand is not a kid's play at all. It is such a complicated thing, but you can understand a geography which is half of Russia, the whole of China, Mongolia, whole of Central Asia, almost whole of West Asia, at one point in time, even Delhi as well. So half of Europe, and all of that ruled by one man. You can understand this guy must have been a special guy, and we would be studying about him today. So, introduction. In the early stages of the 13th century, the great empires of the Euro-Asian continent realized the dangers posed to them by the arrival of a new political power in the steppes of Central Asia, steppes, that is the grasslands of Central Asia. Genghis Khan had united the Mongol people. Genghis Khan's political vision, however, went far beyond the creation of a confederacy of Mongol tribes in the steppes of Central Asia. He had a mandate from God to rule the world. Students, this sentence, I can, it would need probably 3 or 4 episodes about. Yeah, there's one thing very common to all the great men of history. All the great men of history, um, whichever their field, and the rulers, the military generals, all of them. One thing has been very special about them, that they've always felt that they were specially chosen by the gods for that purpose, that they were clearly uh, just fulfilling the God's wish on this planet. They always felt that whatever they would do, whatever might have been their backgrounds, their humble backgrounds, they might have come from extremely impoverished backgrounds, but they always felt that ultimately the gods would support them. Okay, and they just went on with their work, whether it was a good work or a bad work, that can be debated today, but then they just went on and always emerged victorious. So that was very, very special about them. And in a similar fashion, Genghis Khan also had an extremely harsh and a hard uh, childhood, and for many, many years, even when he was young, he had an extremely hard life. Okay, he became the great Khan much later in life. That's how it was. And he always felt that yes, it was divinity that would support him, and he always felt that. He was here on the planet only to fulfill God's wish. And that is why it's written here. Genghis Khan's political vision, however, went beyond the creation of a confederacy. Now, what is a confederacy, students? I'm sure you would be, yeah, you must be having your political science classes as well. Confederacy is essentially a collection of different provinces, and it could be kingdoms, and all of them come together, under one umbrella, one platform, and they form a union, and that kind of union is known as a confederacy. Now, of course, different arrangements can be worked within a confederacy. Sometimes the unions completely forego all their powers, but then there are certain constituents. There could be certain constituents within a confederacy who would like to retain certain powers and would like to delegate certain powers. Yes. So even though his own lifetime was spent consolidating his hold over the Mongol tribes, and you can see in this map the whole gray area. It's a huge geography, students. If you actually look at the world map today, at least the Asian map and the West Asian map and the European map, you would understand that almost so many countries and so many countries are within this geography. Yes. So that is how it is. And even though in his own lifetime was spent consolidating his hold over Mongol tribes, leading and directing campaigns into adjoining areas in northern China, Transoxiana, students, essentially is areas around Central Asia, that is today's countries of Uzbekistan, then Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. These are the countries which essentially form Transoxiana. Afghanistan, Eastern Iran, and Russian steppes, that is, again, the grasslands. His descendants traveled further afield to fulfill Genghis Khan's vision and create the largest empire the world had ever seen. That is, this Genghis Khan vision was not a flash in the pan whereby he came and he consolidated things, and the moment he died, everything was gone. No. His son, his grandsons carried on with that legacy, and that was started by the father and the grandfathers, and they kept on with this legacy and did everything within their power and their capabilities to ensure that, yes, that vision of Mongol supremacy would be could be carried on as long as possible. So it was in the spirit of Genghis Khan's ideals that his grandson Mongke, that is in 1251 and till 1260. Students, you have to understand that Genghis Khan died in 1227. So naturally, we are talking about his grandson Mongke, 1251 to 1260, who ruled. That is warned the French ruler Louis IX. In heaven, there is only one eternal sky. On earth, there is only one Lord, Genghis Khan, the son of heaven. Okay, so rest is, of course, you can read, but then this line, these few words tell you that they were at the zenith of power. Someone who happens to be thousands of kilometers away, that is Mongolia, their stranglehold of power, and France, which is thousands of literally kilometers away, he is in a position to threaten even the French ruler. That, yes, and just remind him who actually is the real ruler, the real king of this planet Earth. And Mongols at that point. Today, students, Mongols are definitely not known for all of that, but yes, there were years when they were the most powerful people on the planet. Okay, extremely ruthless, and but of course had a great spot to a great talent. I'm sorry, to spot skill, talent, merit. They actually had a society of meritocracy, which we find even today so difficult to impose and to work out in India, even in the 21st century. And they had figured it out 800 years before. Right, so that was the reason why they could expand and conquer everything that they set their eyes on. They just had to desire and wish and it would be within their grasp. So coming to the paragraph, that is the next one. These were not empty threats, and the 12, 30, 36 and 41 campaigns of Batu, another grandson of Genghis Khan, devastated Russian lands up to Moscow, seized Poland and Hungary, and camped outside Vienna, that would be Austria. And in the 13th century, it did seem that the eternal sky was in the sight of the Mongols, and many parts of China, Middle East, and Europe saw in Genghis Khan's conquest of inhabited world the wrath of God, the beginning of the day of judgment. The wrath of God essentially is the anger of gods, right? So Genghis Khan was always seen as a कर्स, जिसको हम हिंदी में श्राप कहते हैं, राइट, कि श्राप देता हूँ. एंड that is how it was. Genghis Khan was seen as a shrap, that if he's at your borders, then it is a curse from God, because you can't win against him, right? Mongols, you can't defeat Mongols. It was understood that if they are at your doorstep, that means you must have done something really terrible, and that is why the anger of gods now is upon you. So the capture of Bukhara. Since Bukhara is, today's Uzbekistan, it's again in the Central Asia, and as we saw in Transoxiana, that would be today, but it's in the country of Uzbekistan. Okay, Juvaini, a 13th century Persian chronicler, that is Iranian chronicler of the Mongol rules of Iran, carried an account of the capture of Bukhara in 1220. After the conquest of the city of Juvaini reported, Genghis Khan went to the festival ground where the rich residents of the city were and addressed them. Imagine the situation where Genghis Khan addresses the people he has just conquered. O people, know that you have committed. Guys, this is not just, I'm reading it out for this because it makes a great quotation, but also it is very, very reflective of the undisputed and indomitable power of the Mongols. They could they they did have whatever they wished, and how cruel and how brutal they were, it also gets very clear from these lines and words. Oh, people, know that you have committed great sins. Now he is telling the people of Bukhara that you must have committed great sins, and that the great ones among you have committed these sins. If you ask me what proof I have for these words, I say, it is because I am the punishment of God. Students, you have to understand, and every man, great man in history, tries to tell its people, that he is a gift of God, that God has sent him to serve them, for their own betterment, the betterment of the people. Everyone tries to say that yes, he is the God's representative. Every ruler tries to say that he's the representation of divinity on the planet, and the gods have sent him to rule them, so that he can be benevolent and they can be benefited, and all those fancy words. But Genghis Khan probably was the only great ruler in history who said that, yes, I am the punishment. I'm not here to make you happy, not at all. Yes, right? So I am the punishment of God. And if you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. So he is actually blaming the people. Must have been, that, okay, I am here because you guys must have done some horrible things. And that is why the punishment of God, an executioner of God, is right among you. And I'm not going to spare any of you. Right? So it's your fault, not my fault that I'm here. Don't think that I'm greedy. Don't think I'm cruel. And I am just here for loot and plunder. Yes, of course I am. But it's not because I am at fault, it is because you are at fault. So you can understand this completely radical take, and a completely radical opinion, and a kind of a very, very transformational thing about conquering and plundering, and which was actually no one before him, no ruler ever before him thought that yes, he was the punishment of God, and that's why he was here to punish people, because God wanted those people to be punished, and no one after them. Okay, there have been great dictators after him, many cruel men after him, but no one as boastful about his cruelty. Thank you, students. We shall continue.